Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel. It's myself, Matt Hill, joined by my regular EFL Betting Show co-host, Gab Sutton, and we're here once again to try and dig out the value from the Football League's betting markets this coming weekend. Now, normally we've been doing this show on Twitter over the last few weeks, but I'm afraid we've had to revert back to YouTube due to some technical gremlins. I've battled away for 10 minutes with little reward, very much like my football team this season. Minus the battling away.
What do you
But
mean battling, Matt?
there's probably a lack of battling from Carlisle actually, but the reward part certainly rings true. But yes, we're here and we're recording it now, so it's going to go back up to YouTube. I will pop a note on socials and hopefully drive our regular viewers over there to watch that. But do us a favour while you're here, if you are watching via YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button on Odds Now to keep in tune with all of our preview content here on the channel. If you're a regular on the EFL Betting Show, you know how it works, but if not, it's pretty simple. Myself and Gab are going to pick out 3 bets each from the upcoming EFL slate to hopefully point you in the direction of some value and some winners. Gab, would you like me to take the honours this week, or would you like to start us off? I'm going to hand you the decision.
Yeah, I'll kick things off. I'd like to go with Watford to win at Coventry at 15-4 because I'm really keen to. I feel like a big reason why Watford, because if you look at things on paper, right, Watford are 8th. They're very much in the playoff conversation on paper. Coventry, I think, are sort of towards the top of the bottom half. They've been in decent form under Frank Lampard, but I feel like the reason why Watford are as big as 15-4 is the news that's broken by sort of mainstream journalists this week that Watford are considering, surprise, surprise, changing their manager, Tom Cleverley, when he's done a fantastic job and he's one of the good things about Watford this season. When we went into the campaign, lots of people around Watford were actually really apprehensive about the season. They didn't feel like they had a core of players that they could rely on going into the campaign. There were lots of unknowns, and Tom Cleverley has brought everything together and he's really maximised the strengths of the squad and improved the likes of Kwadwo Bar, and Rocco Vata looks a fantastic investment from Celtic. Vacuum Bayo scoring goals, Matty Pollock's been brilliant at the back, and so Watford all of a sudden have been a lot better than most people expected. They had a slight drop in form, but I think I was really hoping that, perhaps naively, that Tom Cleverley could be the one to really build something at Watford. So I think the fact that this news about the Pozzos kind of basically being the Pozzos is a reason why the theory is morale's going to be on the floor and Watford are going to lose against an informed Coventry side. I understand the argument. I understand why Watford are outsiders for that reason. However, I think there's also a possibility that, given that Watford officially have come out and said Tom Cleverley will remain as manager, he'll be in charge for the Coventry game. Whether or not how sincere that statement was, I don't know. But I certainly think that if Tom Cleverley is in charge, it means that the players have got to play for him because he's got all the players on side, he's got all the fans on side. So you're going to have this away following that are going to be right there. They'll be singing for Tom Cleverley all game. There'll be this atmosphere of sort of determination to support Tom Cleverley against the owners. And I think that's actually going to be positive. I think Watford fans are going to make a lot more noise than maybe Coventry home fans are going to make. And therefore, I think there's a good chance that Watford end up winning this game as a means of basically the players going out and showing how much they want to sort of support and play for Tom Cleverley. So that's the way I would see it going, more than maybe what the traders think, which is that it puts Watford at a massive disadvantage in terms of this game.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you actually in terms of the thinking, because I think, yes, if Cleverley had been dismissed, then they would be quite right to push Watford's price out. I think there would be discontent in the stands and potentially on the pitch, but he seems like he has a group of players united behind him from as far as we can see. So you would think that this dismissal and this news would unsettle players, but also the fact that he's still in charge, maybe galvanise them, like you say, and really determined to put on a performance for their manager, who's done a lot for them, worked really well in difficult circumstances. Whether or not that change comes, unfortunately, for all the record and back history that we have of the Pozzos and Watford, you do feel like there will be substance to these rumours. Pacheta, for anyone who's had their head in the sand, is the Spanish manager being strongly linked with the role. I believe a journalist in Spain said that it was confirmed and it was a done deal. But Watford have obviously gone backwards and said that there's nothing done. It's just speculation. Although initially they only no commented, which seemed to spark a real backlash from the fans. I think it's a really interesting game for all the reasons you say, Gab. And obviously, full respect to Coventry, they're a fantastic outfit, but they have been tough to rely on this season. Obviously, in a good reign of form at the moment, but I don't think this is a peak Coventry that we've seen at certain times in the last few years either, is it?
No, I think in terms of under Lampard, they've been okay. I think Efron Mason Clark has been the one that stood out. They've had some games like the one against Plymouth Argyle where they've really sort of cut loose going forward. I don't think they've been sort of outstanding. I mean, the way it's priced, you'd almost think Coventry were in the top six, so I think they're sort of a little bit overrated. And yeah, I think there's a world where Watford actually play really well in this game and just come out with that sort of defiance, really. So that's what I think might be the case. So I really like that price as well. I think it's extremely generous.
It's all about price. It certainly is. And just under 4-1 on the Watford victory. Well, I think a compelling case made there. It's certainly an interesting game, one to keep an eye on. And I think proceed with caution as well. If you are somebody that just likes to back the favourites in an accumulator, maybe Coventry aren't as rock solid as the price could suggest there. For all the reasons listed, there's definitely other variables at play. Well, I'll keep things in the Championship for my first pick. I was just saying to Gab off camera as well, I've seen a couple of other respected sort of EFL judges putting this one up, and I did think twice about, should I go a different way? But I have backed this one myself. I backed it in the midweek. I thought the price was too good to be true. I'm amazed it hasn't contracted. It is Sunderland to beat Plymouth to 0, which is 21-20 odds against. And just to contextualize this, we're getting odds against about one of the best teams in the division beating the poorest side in the division with a shutout, which is something Sunderland have done in their last 3 games. They're looking really, really good defensively this season. I think earlier in the season, there was an element of creating a lot of chances, look really dynamic going forward, do concede a goal, but still kind of get the job done. Now they're just looking a little bit more assured, a little bit more solid. They're not really giving many chances up. And Plymouth on the flip side, it's been a disastrous start for Miran Muslic, someone who came across really, really well, as we spoke about in his first couple of press conferences and interviews. I was really encouraged with the impact that he may be able to make at Plymouth, but clearly the problems are far more sizable than Muslic could have possibly imagined, I think. Compounded by the news with Morgan Whittaker, Muslic saying that he refused to turn up for their match in midweek, which they were 5-0 down to Burnley at half time. So really, really sour. We'll maybe talk about Whittaker in a little bit more detail in a moment. But in terms of just Plymouth, to be 5-0 down at half time, yes, it only finished 5-0, but you do feel there's an element of Burnley taking their foot off the gas there, as you do sometimes see when there's like a first half rout. And
it's
really
a bit,
are all extreme.
There's 2 different 5-0s, isn't there? There's the 5-0 where you're 1-0 down going into the last 10 minutes, and then the other team just break loose and score 4 goals in the last 10 minutes and it sort of game it. But there's a 5-0 where in the first half you're sort of completely annihilated, and then the second
Men
half,
against boys, really.
I feel like it's a slightly different kettle of fish, isn't it? So yeah, I think I agree. I worry about Plymouth Argyle massively. I think we have to consider them the weakest team in the Championship. We'd hope that removing Wayne Rooney would have made a difference, but it hasn't really sort of transpired that way in the performances, both against against Oxford, against QPR, and obviously against Burnley in midweek. And they were all 3 home games, which is where Argyle had got the majority of their points, and their away form's actually horrendous. So I'm really worried about Plymouth Argyle. I don't think they're going to have the quality, especially with the question mark surrounding Morgan Whittaker at the moment and the likelihood of him moving on at what must be a reduced price.
I believe, Gab, I was reading about an hour or so ago that Middlesbrough have had a £6 million bid accepted for Morgan Whittaker, and it's very close to being done. So I have mixed feelings about that because Clearly, Whittaker is the best player that they have, and he is that one that has a moment of magic and a bit of quality. He scored that goal against Brentford from 30 yards, which has set up a trip, a clash with Liverpool in a couple of weeks. So, big goal. He scored a lot of big goals for them. He's been a fundamental part of their success for the last 2 years. But I do feel, unfortunately, like he has soured his legacy in the way that he has acted in this week, leaving Plymouth. And I feel like fans may feel that as well, because when the chips are down, the last thing you need is players acting like that, not turning up. And there may be another side to the story, but Whittaker has had earlier in his career, he's been blighted by some questionable attitude and things like that. It appeared like he'd matured and got beyond that at Plymouth, but I think to not turn up for a game, if we take Muslich's words at face value, I think that's really, really poor form, and I think he really leaves Plymouth on a sour note, which is a shame for what has been a wonderful spell.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. And then the other side to it is Plymouth Argyle have these issues away from home, and whereas Sunderland have been very strong at home. I don't think they've lost at the Stadium of Light yet this season, so there's a really strong, solid home record for them. And I think that with the talent that they've got in there in Joe Bellingham and Enzo Lafay, they've just signed, seems to be very highly rated from the European sort of scouts that I've spoken to about people within the game. I think that's they've made a really good addition there, and they've got some real quality in midfield. So yeah, I'm expecting Sunderland to win this, and I think the win to nil. You'd rather take the win to nil at 21-20 than the outright win at 2-7, wouldn't you? Because I think the chances of Sunderland keeping a clean sheet are pretty high.
Well, Sunderland have kept 7 clean sheets in their 13 home games, like you say, unbeaten at the Stadium Light as well. Meanwhile, Plymouth, they very, very rarely score away from home. They've blanked in their last 5 away games. And going back further than that, they've actually blanked in, I think it's 10 of their last 12 on the road. So it just feels like the stars have aligned here for this bet. I was expecting this to be odds on. Obviously, you do eke out a little bit of value because you're taking on the risk that a goal at any moment will kill the bet. But I just don't see Plymouth producing anywhere near enough chances against a really confident free-flowing Plymouth Sunderland side. Think of the troubles Plymouth have on the road. All the elements are there for this bet. I've taken it myself. I've stuck my neck on the block. My own money is down. We'll see how that one pans out. Gab, back over to you. We both dip into League One for our second pick. You're going for Stockport to beat Crawley and over 2.5 goals in the game. Talk to us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, I think a little bit like the Sunderland pick, you're not getting a huge amount of juice by just going for the win. In Stockport's case, that's 1-2, which I think we want to try and push the boat out a little bit more here on odds now, don't we? So I think Stockport showed at Reading last time out, another playoff contender, that they can score goals. You're looking at Ollie Norwood's deliveries from set pieces, can be a real cause of a threat. There's a sign that they're not missing Louis Barry quite as much as we feared they might. It has given Dave Challoner a chance to sort of home in on the partnership of Isaac Oliofe and Carl Wootton, and I've actually been quite impressed with Wootton in terms of actually his mobility in transitional attacks. We always think of him as a target man, but he seems like someone who can hold his own in those more fast-paced moments. So I think that partnership with Oliofe can be dangerous. They've also made an attempt to replace Louis Barry by signing Micah Hamilton, which has happened just yesterday on loan from Middlesbrough. I've spoken to Jake Tong about him on my podcast last night, who studied him at youth level for Manchester City and thinks he's a very exciting player. So Micah Hamilton's there coming in. So
he's been on the verge of the City team at times, hasn't he, Gab? Micah Hamilton.
Exactly.
He was very highly rated at one point.
Yeah, so if Pep Guardiola, good enough for Pep Guardiola, he's good enough for me. I think Stockport. I back Stockport to continue carrying a threat and continuing to create chances, especially against a Crawley team that I think can be wide open, because Crawley have got a squad that on paper probably wouldn't look out of place in the National League if you're going pound for pound. And yet they still try to play a very expansive style, sort of high risk style of football. Which means that I think they can be left open, and therefore it's hardly surprising that they're conceding on average a couple of goals a game. So, and you add that into the fact that they're playing a Stockport side who are one of the better attacking teams in the league, add to the fact that Crawley might be able to find a goal themselves, because they are, they have shown the means to create chances away from home. I think there's a good chance that there's going to be 3 or more goals in this game, and I also think there's a good chance Stockport win. So I'm happy to go with that one at 5-4.
Yeah, and just to add to what you're saying there, Crawley shipped 16 goals in their last 6 games, so even higher than their 2 goals a game at the moment. They're on a 6-game winless run. Rob Elliott, when he came in there, I thought he was doing a really good job to a point, but this wedded to this style of play with the players that, as you mentioned, probably subpar level of players for the level. You're always asking for trouble, aren't you? And you're always asking to concede chances at a bare minimum, I think. And we have seen some great goal-scoring performances from Crawley, particularly the 4-4 at Exeter, which they should have won, 4-1 up and kind of blew it. But yeah, I just don't have any faith in them to keep out sides, particularly good sides like Stockport.
Do you know what, Matt? I think it's probably if you're a very process-driven coach, it's probably a bad idea, even if you're going from the National League to League One and the opportunity to prove yourself on that stage. I think it's a bad idea to go to a team in relegation trouble, because if you're going to a team battling against relegation, you've got to basically stabilise things defensively. And it's much harder to stand out as a coach, as a strategist, as someone who can coach really good patterns of play, because you're more focused on just, can we get the distances between units, can we get the basics right, and that's the most important thing. And I think anything else, and it becomes very difficult, because you might score a few more goals, but then you'll concede loads. And I think that's the risk that Crawley are running at the moment. I think that's the risk that they're going to run at Edgeley Park.
Yeah, don't join a relegation team if you are a process-focused manager. Mike Williamson, are you listening? No, seriously though. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And unfortunately, results are king at the bottom of the table, and sometimes you do have to be a little bit versatile with your style in certain positions, I think. And that's probably an interesting topic for another time. I think, does it make you a poorer manager when you're not willing to adapt your style? We've seen that. I mean, that applies right across the pyramid as well, doesn't we? We've seen Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham. He's getting a lot of questions asked for his lack of adaptability, and then my team at the basement of the Football League, same questions being asked. So it's a level-wide debate, and probably one for another time, to be fair, because we've got 3 more picks to get through this week. I will stay in League One and keep it quite simple. I'm back in Rotherham to beat Burton at 21-20, and I'm going to put up a little bit of a longer term poke as well. I'm going to back Rotherham. Well, I have backed Rotherham this week for a top 6 finish at 10-1. I just feel that price is a little bit too big. I'm not yet convinced they're gonna quite get there, but I do feel like they're up and rolling now, more like the team I was expecting to see from the start of the season. Steve Evans has spoke very honestly this week about how the owners stood by him at a tough moment earlier in the season, and they did kind of tell him in no uncertain terms, if results do not improve, you will be sacked. But they gave him the chance to improve things, and I think we are seeing this improvement now from Rotherham. Really good little streak that they're on at the moment, 6 unbeaten in all comps, winning 4 of those. Follow up a good home win over Bolton Wanderers with a 4-2 victory over Charlton. A game that on last week's show I made a strong case for being an under-cagey affair. And of course, there was 2 goals in the first 10 minutes and it ended up being a goal fest. So classic. But from a Rotherham perspective, I think you have to be encouraged with the way things are going. The goals are coming from all comers and all areas, which is always encouraging as well when you see different names popping up with the strikes. They take on a Burton team who, to their credit, ended a really long winless streak. I think they were 10 without a win, or certainly 9 without a win before that victory at Wigan. It was probably deserved as well. I think they probably had the better of the play from what I can see there. But Wigan are a funny old team, aren't they? They've clearly got a lot of talent in the ranks, but they do throw in the odd stinking result. And I wasn't all that surprised to see them slip up at home to Burton, it must be said. But I think Burton are where they are. I think they are one of the poorer sides in the division. I think their squad has a little bit of quality, but probably when you put it on paper against Rotherham's squad, they're probably lacking in most areas. And like I say, I think the key thing here is Rotherham. They're up and rolling now. They're on a 6-game unbeaten run in all competitions. They're probably sniffing that last playoff spot now. And I think Evans will really be driving it home that the job is nowhere near done. They've got to maintain these standards. They've got to go on a really good winning run here to propel themselves into contention. And on that 10-1 for a top 6 finish, I think if they win this one, I can see that going into sort of 6s or 7s. And I think this is quite possibly a price that will be long gone in a couple of weeks. So I'm taking a little bit of a chance here, but they play Burton away and then they play Cambridge at home. And, I'm expecting 6 points there. And I think they're going to be an awful lot closer to those playoff places after that. Don't know what you make of this pick, Gab.
Yeah, I think there's always that feeling after a team but I think Burton might be 8 points adrift of safety at the moment. After they've won a game, you think, oh, have they turned a corner? But I think there's probably more value in probably looking at the law of averages, and if they follow it up, then maybe there's a different conversation to be had about whether Burton can make the great escape. But I think for now we have to take them at their word, if you like, in terms of where they are in the league. Whereas with Rotherham, I feel like they're looking. I spoke to Matt Lax from the New York Talk podcast on Rotherham the other night, and does seem, and it struck to me on the highlights as well, that they're looking a bit more intentional and a bit more precise about their play in the final third. They used to kind of be creating chances through crosses, flying across the face of the box and relying on ricochets to get chances, whereas nowadays they feel like they can create chances by being a bit more intentional and precise. So that's what I like. I think Malik Wilkes and Andre Green are striking up a real partnership, which creates a dilemma, I think, when Sam Nombe is fit. They've got Cam Humphreys, who's doing really well at the base of midfield. He's a ball-playing defender. Steve Evans likes ball-playing defenders at the base of midfield because he doesn't want them to play out from the back when they're in defence. But no, Cam Humphreys in at the base of midfield is doing very well for them and looks like he's thriving at the bottom of the diamond. And then you've got Adofin and Jules who are looking like a pretty solid centre-back partnership. So, yeah, I'm liking Rotherham at the moment. They've been one of the better, I think it's top 6 form since around the start of December. So, I think they're steadily climbing the table and could be coming into that top 6 equation, especially given that the bar is quite low for a playoff finish in League One this season. Maybe Rotherham might be given a bit of a reprieve from that bad start, that they're still in the mix.
That's it. And I'm looking at that. I'm looking at teams that could charge into the playoffs in this league, because we spoke about it a couple of times now. It does look like a league where somebody could put a run together and get themselves into that mix. I'm not convinced about a couple of the sides in the playoff spots currently. And there's a lot of potential runners, but I think at 10-1, there's enough juice there in the price to take a chance and want them on side. So I've done that. And hopefully they will prove my faith right here and get the better of Burton. Gab, your final pick. We're into League Two. Familiar friends for you. You've wrote a lovely column about this as well on oddsnow.com, Notts County, which people can go and read now over on the website. You made a really good case for them to muscle their way into the top 3 come season end, and you're going to back them here to get the better of Bromley and keep a clean sheet in the process.
Yeah, a bit of a copy and paste from last week, because I did back Notts County, win to 0 at Accrington Stanley. That one
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I'm going to go Notts County to win to 0 until the end of the season, until they don't win to 0. That's how I'm going to do it. Maybe they can replicate Burnley in the Championship. But in all seriousness, I think Notts County, they're just, I think they're slightly just a shade of evens to beat Bromley in the outright market. But I think the win to 0 is a really attractive price to me at 11-4, bearing in mind that they're into double figures for clean sheets this season. Basically the same reasons that I discussed last week as to why they're better defensively. They went from being one of the worst defensive sides.
I was going to say, this is the complete opposite of what they were last season, isn't it, defensively?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's because they've just got better personnel. Alex Bass, for instance, is proving a really reliable goalkeeper, better defenders in Jacob Badeau and Matty Platt, more midfield depth, more defensively diligent wing-backs, and crucially, they've got Jody Jones coming back fit. And I think they've sold Dan Crowley, obviously, to MK Dons, but Jody Jones, for me, smashed the assist record in League Two last season with 24 assists in a league season. That's more
Best
than
player in the league, Gab, when fit.
I know, absolutely, yeah. Just brings so much individual magic, and injuries are probably the only reason why he's not playing in the top two leagues of English football right now. Because I've known of his talents for a long time, going back to when he was starting for Dagenham as a 16-year-old back in 2015. So he's clearly always had the talent. It's just injuries have kind of got in the way a bit. But the loss of other teams is kind of Notts County's gain at the moment. And I'm expecting Jody Jones to light things up and really help inspire them into the top three. But because they're solid defensively, I'm happy to back them again to win to 0. And I think again 11-4 is a really big price.
Yeah, I agree with that actually, and I think you made a good case about just the change of personnel at the back and just, quite frankly, having better defenders for the system is really important if you're going to play out, that you have defenders who are comfortable in doing it and have the right physical attributes. And I don't think I think there's too many sides that tried to do that before they have the right personnel, and maybe Notts were one of them last season, and I think they've identified that issue. Jacob Badeau, I think, like you say, he's got the physical element, but he's also got that composure, and it just gives them a much better platform to build their attacks off. And a Bromley side who, again, I think just staying in League Two for Bromley is a really, really good achievement, and I think they've got more than enough to do that. But they're not a spectacular outfit, and I do feel like when they come up against the leading lights of the division, that gap in class can tell sometimes. So I really do like that bet. I'm going to finish the show then with Barrow to beat Grimsby. It pains me to say that as a Carlisle fan, but I do think Barrow are well positioned at 6-5 here to make this a good bet, because Grimsby are a team I like when they're playing well, but I think we have to be honest and say they're not in the best moment at the moment. David Artell was still quite downbeat after the 1-1 draw with Chesterfield last time out. Said his team didn't try and take control of the game enough, way too passive, not playing how he wants his team to play. I think he was quite pleased with the response after the break, but they still didn't really create many chances in the second half. And that draw was previously was following up 2 defeats to Accrington and Bradford, which probably tells you where Grimsby are at, unfortunately. They have had some great patches of form in this season, but it always feels like a couple of losses are never too far away with this side, and just a tough team to hang your hat on. Barrow, meanwhile, they've had a pretty dreadful season, haven't they, under Stephen Clements, who eventually paid the ultimate cost by losing his job. I think there was something like 1 win in 14 or 15 games when Clements got the boot. So it was long on the cards, but he was very much another one wedded to a certain style of play, and there was unrest growing week by week with the fan base about unwillingness to sort of try different things. But I do think ultimately this Barrow squad has a decent amount of quality in it for the level. I do like some of the players they've got in this group. They've gone a little bit left field with their appointment of a new manager. They've hired Andy Wing from Solihull Moors, and anyone not familiar...
A bit left wing.
Yeah, anyone... Stop it. Anyone not familiar with Andy Wing, he's had to do it the hard way. He started off his coaching career in the non-league right the way down with Banbury Town, got them promoted into the National League North for the first time in their history, then left, kept them up, then left to Solihull. First season at Solihull got them into the playoff final. They were a penalty kick away from getting into the Football League. And he leaves them in a playoff spot as well. They also... quite notably, he suffered the ignominy of losing in back-to-back weekends at Wembley on a penalty shootout, because the week after they lost the playoff final, they lost the FA Trophy final to Gateshead on penalties as well. So I think all told, a man that has done really, really well with the resources given to him in his 2 jobs deserves this crack at the EFL. I think Solihull were quite surprised by the fact that he was poached and it happened so quickly. But I watched his first interview with the Barrow social media team, and he said that it was an opportunity he was desperate for to prove himself in the Football League. And when he talked about his philosophy, he talked about putting smiles back on players' faces, trying to lift the morale. He wants to build a rapport with the fans. And I think when you're a club that's in a losing slump, having somebody coming in like that with such a positive outlook and a positive mindset, wanting to listen to the fans, listen to the players about what's been going wrong, and make these changes that the players maybe wanted to make. And I think when they've been wedded to a certain style of play with Stephen Clements, there does become a level of frustration in a dressing room when things aren't going well. You start questioning why you're doing things a certain way. And I think Andy Wing coming in, he strikes me as the kind of character that's just going to say, okay, guys, you know what, this week we go back to basics, we do what we're good at. and they play a Grimsby side who, as I say, took 1 point from a possible 9. They're not the best of travellers. They had a freakish winning run away from home earlier in the season, but since then it's been pretty dire. It's a long old trip up to Barrow, and I think with the new manager bounce factored in, I really do think this is a winnable first game for Andy Wing and Barrow.
Interesting. I don't quite agree with you, Matt. I think 6-5. If I'm backing, I feel like it's 6-5 is quite a narrow price to go just on the expectation of a managerial impact, whereas you've got a team in Grimsby Town who are making clear, tangible progress, whereas we don't really know how good Andy Wing's going to be or what sort of impact he's able to make. It's more hypothetical, whereas there's hard evidence of clear progress that Grimsby have made under David Artell. They've won close to half their games so far this season, and are clearly one of the better teams in the league with a sniff of the playoffs. Bearing in mind they also had a spate of injuries in the first half of the season, which have cleared a little bit now. So I would hesitate to back against Grimsby at those sorts of prices, and I'd probably be more inclined to actually go for, if I could get a 6-5 on, or an even say on Grimsby draw no bet, or maybe slightly under.
I'll be able to tell you what you can get on that if you give me one moment.
Sure, yeah. So I'd probably take the double chance at. I imagine it's maybe a bit shorter than evens. For the double chance.
Yes,
So
let me let you know the double chance, will be a bit shorter. The double chance for Grimsby will be 1.75, so 3 to 4 kind of region for the double chance, and the draw no bet for Grimsby would be 6 to 4. So that would be how you would play it. You'd go the other way.
I would much rather take the 6 to 4 on Grimsby draw no bet, because with the insurance of the return stake if it's a draw, than go for the 6 to 5.
I shall propose a bet between myself and yourself of 10p that Barrow and Grimsby, and you can have the draw as well.
Okay.
And let's see how we go. Yeah. Maybe I'm winging it with this selection a little bit, but we'll see.
I'll tell you what, Matt, you can get me a pint at the next the next odds now get together.
Fine, we'll call it a pint, no problem, and I'll happily take one back off you if it goes the other way.
All right.
It's win-win for me, Gab, because I don't want to be cheering Barrow. So it's I'll be happy whatever happens at the end of the day. But yeah, I do. I am expecting, unfortunately, a bit of an upturn. I think Andy Wing's a good appointment, maybe the right man at the right time. Really impressed with the work he's done in his first 2 jobs, and Barrow, of course, had great success poaching from the non-league with Pete Wild, so you do have to have a level of respect there, but we shall see. It's an interesting game anyway, and a good point to finish this week's show on. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a like and let us know in the comments what you fancy in the EFL this weekend. We'll just pull our selections back up onto the screen so that you can take a look. I need to get rid of that frame. So I'm going for Sunderland to beat Plymouth to 0, which would be my nap at 21-20. Same price about Rotherham, inform Rotherham getting the better of Burton. And a bit of disagreement there, but I'm going to stick my neck on the block with Barrow to beat Grimsby at 6 to 5. Gab, meanwhile, you're going for Watford to beat Coventry at a ginormous 15 to 4 and save Tom Cleverley for at least another week or so, you would think. Stockport to beat Crawley with over 2.5 goals in the game, as we discussed, 2 quite chaotic teams there, particularly Crawley. And Notts County to beat Bromley to 0. It served you well last week. Will it serve you well again this week? What is your best bet out of those 3? Will you be going for one of the bigger prices, or are you going to hang your hat on?
Yeah, I think I'll go with Watford to beat Coventry. I think 15.
Yeah, you've talked yourself into that one, haven't you? I could see the way you were talking. You're really starting to believe it.
To get just under 4 to 1 on that one, I think that's
a massive price.
So yeah. I'm really happy with that one. Price.
Okay, well, we shall see. I'll make sure next week I've got the running totals and some recap results, and we'll be talking about who's buying who a pint, courtesy of what goes on at Holker Street. Thanks very much for watching. We'll be back next week for the EFL Betting Show, hopefully live on Twitter if the technology behaves, but if not, rest assured we'll be here on YouTube. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and see you again very soon.